It isn't an exaggeration to say choices are the most important things in our lives. We make choices as a way to move on, as a statement to live. We all have to go from choice to choice throughout our lives, from something as minor as deciding what clothes to wear to something bigger, like which job we should take. According to Dr. Joel Humans, everyday humans will make about 35,000 conscious decisions. A fictional design experiment is a critical design project by designer Koapham in collaboration with writer Maya Kurdoglu and director Zen Nguyen, investigating the topic of choices through the film and various sets of objects used in the film. The project aims to explore the context of choices, the value of choices, and the affordances in design that influence decision-making. The project consists of 5 alternating plot lines and endings of a specific sequence of the movie Julie and Julia, alterations in the stories triggered by the iterative design of picked objects within that certain sequence. There are 5 sets of redesigned objects, each set of object featuring a different ending, each ending slightly more abstract than the previous. Julie and Julia tells 2 parallel stories of 2 women living in different eras. Julie is dissatisfied in a frustrating job and decides to start a food blog, setting out to cook through 525 recipes in a cookbook written by Julia Child. On the parallel storyline, we follow Julia writing her cookbook that will later on make her so famous. Julie thinks cooking is the best way for her to escape her turbulent life and is in search for new opportunities and motivation to change her life. During the creation of this project, the designer and the writer worked really closely, establishing a working method of reiteration of both design and the story in which the design influences the plot and the plot informs another design iteration. They have focused on a certain sequence in the movie, with the greatest impact and the most space for change of behavior. In the sequence picked, Julie prepares boeuf bourguignon for Judith Jones coming over to meet her, who is the editor of the book that made Julia Child famous. Julie cooks the dish using her pot a night before the actual dinner, but accidentally burns it because she oversleeps, where the timer fails to wake her up. So she takes a day off to redo the food, lying to her boss in order to do so. However, Judith cannot make it to the dinner. Julie is upset and soon turns into an argument with her husband, who leaves in a fury. The sequence ends with Julie facing an angry boss the next day at work. At the center of the project are the 2 objects used by Julie in this sequence, the pot and the timer. The palpable outcome of the project is a range of 5 different scenarios, showing the use of 5 different designs of the pot and the timer, which influences changes to the ending of the movie. Each set of object has been aimed to cause different choices, the extremeness of them being in an escalated order, starting from a daily life scenario, then taking the reality into a more fantasy-like fictional territory. Plot 1 featuring the loud timer and the carryable pot. Loud timer is a timer that can create exceptionally loud sounds, similar to a speaker. Carryable pot is a pot featuring a handle that can be attached when needed. The loud timer makes both Julie and her husband wake up annoyed, which leads them to fight. As a result, instead of making up after Judith's failed dinner night, they make peace the day before. So when the editor doesn't show up, the husband is very supportive. They take the pot with the handle to the editor. Julie gets the book deal. Plot 2, featuring the throw timer and 2-compartment pot. Throw timer is a timer that will only stop the sound when users throw it at a surface. 2-compartment pot is a pot containing 2 compartments, allowing users to cook 2 elements separately in one pot. The throwing timer helps Julie to wake up full of energy. She checks the food in the 2-compartment pot, realizing it's bland. Being so energetic in this late hour, she decides to alter the food. She carries it out, trying another recipe by adding bacon and vegetables on the top compartment, letting the juice drop down to the 2nd compartment to achieve the saltiness in a different way. Later on, when she writes about it in her blog, people are super hyped about it. She ends up opening a restaurant. Plot 3, featuring the pot with 4 handles and the ball timer. 4-handle pot is a pot designed to be carried by 2 people. One person alone cannot do so as they will lose balance. Ball timer is a globe. The material of the timer is elastic, inviting the user to throw and catch. This plot shows how objects can influence the choice of more than just one person. When Julie and her husband talk about blogging, writing, and cooking, they agree that the husband would need to be around to help due to the collaborative nature of the pot. We witness them working together in the cooking scene. The timer scene is very playful, where they throw it back and forth to each other. The dialogue is changed. Husband is now more into the whole blog and genuinely excited as well. He has gained a sense of involvement. When the editor doesn't show up, this time the husband is upset too. They are sad together, and eventually he suggests being their own editor. In the end, Julie publishes a cookbook with the help of the husband. Plot 4 featuring the pot with holes and the sensual timer with texture button. Pot with holes has been designed without handles. If users want to lift it up, they have to slot their hand into the pot, which consists of a few holes. Sensual timer goes with a texture button. When the users need to change the timer, they have to constantly slide the button up and down, causing a provocative sense. This plot really focuses on an object's effect on changing someone's behavior and mentality. When she cooks, she gradually sticks more of her fingers in the pot's holes because she starts enjoying the heat and the pain that comes with it. When she uses the timer, the texture of the timer evokes her desires and senses. While waiting for the dish to cook, instead of TV watching, they make love. Sex is wild in general. The relationship with the husband is more passionate. We can see it through dialogue and acting. When the editor doesn't come in, the fight is aggressive. Plot 5, featuring the cable pot. The cable pot is a slow-cook pot with a pipe coming out from its lid, linked to with a face mask. On two sides, there are components that are connected to two bracelets which have a heat sensor inside. The users will sense the smell of the food and the heat coming from the pot to feel that the food is being cooked. This plot embraces the relationship between object and human, and comparing this relationship with the relationship between human and human. Instead of setting a timer, she hooks herself up to the pot. The pot conveys a mask connecting the lid to let her smell the food. In her arms, there are bracelets connecting to the pot to let her feel the heat of the food. She sits there immersed in the sensations of beef cooking. The husband is not involved at all. The next day, when the editor doesn't show up, she is a bit upset and hooks herself up to the pot once more. We watch as her job, her mom leaves her messages, her husband becomes more and more absent, all the while Julie hooked to her pot. In a fictional design experiment, the designer used fictional design principles to tell a story about choices. By investigating the props used in Julie and Julia, the objects were redesigned based on the ideology of performative object by Christina Nadirer. The designer investigated these diegetic artifacts as a mean to catalyze the protagonist's choices, which stem from her consciousness. The design iteration process focused on Nadirer's findings in Design Mindful Interaction, the category of performative objects, about how people inspect the social concomitants as they utilize the intended purpose of objects. Accordingly, designing modifications and functions of items act as the necessary external agents that triggers the process to break through conventional patterns of perception and preconceptions. These objects must be performative, meaning that they are considered in the context of everyday use, intentionally disrupted in terms of function. The aim behind using the fictional experiment method is to invite the audience into the discussion about choices upon seeing the various object choices and the endings they lead to. Before knowing the ending, the project pushes the audience to think on how and what makes them choose the particular object, and after seeing the ending driven from those particular objects, on how they could grow an awareness about how objects can influence decisions. How the audience could choose their objects after they experience the experiment. For the designers, the project raises questions on how they use their design knowledge to affect choices. The different endings shown in the project are non-hierarchical. It is hard to say one choice is better than the other one, underlining that choices are incomparable. A fictional design experiment invites the audience to question the unit of choices, reconsidering their relationship with objects.